Awesome. Well, thanks, Manny, for the intro. Yeah, so really quick, as Manny said, my name's Leo Laskin. I'm a test automation advisor at Sauce. He's sort of my boss. You should know what my title is. Quick warning for everybody sitting in the back row. If you chose to sit in the back row, not only do I bite, I do call on people in the back row. So have fun with that. So real quick, the mic works? Is it this remote? Oh, sorry, wrong remote. Okay, so yeah, my background before I actually joined Sauce, I have about 10 years of QA automation experience, everything from starting with manual tests. I mean, we all started cutting our teeth doing some very basic manual testing, writing test cases in Excel spreadsheets and God knows what else. Then moving on into an automation role, managing all sorts of teams internationally, all over the world, large teams, small teams, all sorts of startups of different shapes and sizes. And then, of course, joining the Selenium team, becoming a contributor. I actually joined by going into the IRC chat room, which you all heard about at Jim's keynote yesterday, yeah? So I joined by going into that chat room and asking a lot of questions. I actually learned how to code because of Selenium. I wasn't really a good coder. I went to school for computer science, but I'll admit that I wasn't really a great programmer before I started writing automation. And I went into the Selenium chat room and was helped out by this guy named Yari Bakken, who has left the Selenium project for other bigger and better things. And he basically taught me how to code in Ruby. And then that spawned all sorts of cool stuff. And I was like, hey, I want to give back and help the Selenium community. So I became a contributor, and I've been doing that for quite some time. And then, of course, guys, if you want to contact me, my Twitter and my email is right there. It's really simple to remember. It's just my name at saucelabs.com. I happen to be the first and only Leo at Sauce, so I got the Leo at Sauce Labs name. So what we're talking about today is really the Sauce REST API and how it works and what you can use it for. How many of you guys have gone out there and actually spent time reading the Sauce wiki? Wow, that's actually impressive. You know, how many of you have read about the REST API? That's a little less. Okay, so look, all the API calls that we use at Sauce are not really publicly available except for 2 of them. Everything else requires you to have a Sauce username and access key. And so we all know how to get our access keys from the My Account page. And of course, your username, it's not your name, it's your actual username. So we're going to go through what they are first and then talk about a few examples of how our customers have used it and then give you some ideas of what you can use them for in your own dashboards and your own uses locally. But also at the end, I'm going to be soliciting you guys giving me your ideas to sharing them with the crowd really, because this conference really is about collaboration and getting everyone sort of moving together, right? So first off, we have the account methods and the get user method. This is really going to get you info about a user account. It's going to return a very basic JSON blob, which you can either use your eyes to parse or a JSON parser if you're doing it programmatically. And then, of course, review it many ways. Now, this is really just going to get you some information about a user, what their concurrency is, et cetera. And what you're probably going to be more interested in, and the thing I see a lot of our customers using, is actually the create sub-account method. This is something that if you want to, on the fly, create users for provisioning, if you want to be able to really quickly add a user without having to go through the Sauce create user interface and just want to do it programmatically, or even I've seen some customers set up like a little internal website that people can just go and sign up for Sauce, and then it goes and creates it on Sauce using their admin token. They're going to use the sub-account. Now, this is really useful later on because as you get more and more users and more people want Sauce, you don't want that one person having to be in charge of administrating the account, and you may have it set up that way in your user account. So save yourself some time, try to find a way to use our REST API to get your usage going. Also, you can actually see there's a couple of really related calls here. We have the sub-accounts and the sibling accounts call. What you're just going to get there is you're just getting a list of all the accounts available to you that fall either to the side in the tree of what you're testing or down below you in the tree of what you're looking at. So if you think of your user tree as literally that, or just a binary tree, you're going to have the admin account and then all the children will be sort of stacked below them. So you may have needs for the sibling accounts, and this is especially true when you have multiple teams branched out across the tree. So you're going to want to be able to identify which teams and then which teams under that have different children and what their children are doing. So the last call is really important for security. Look, we all know people move on, they change teams, they leave jobs, et cetera. you may not want to just delete their account because you may have historical data associated with that account. There may be tests that they've run in the past that you're interested in seeing. There may be artifacts that we have on sauce that we keep in our archives for you that you want to keep around. So you may want to update their access key so that they can't go and use sauce after they've left. And then, that way you have security, you're still able to keep them out of their account, but you don't have to worry about them utilizing your minutes or your concurrency at any time to do their side gig open source project they're working on. By the way, if you do have an open source project, we do give away free usage for that. So if you are an open source contributor and you need sauce, let us know. Okay, so tunnel methods are just for those of you, how many of you are testing internal facing websites? How many of you are testing like staging environments and QA environments and so on? And how many, and everyone keep your hands up. Cool, okay, how many of you are using a Sauce Connect tunnel to do that? Everyone, cool, yeah, so everyone cares about security, right? We don't want our data stolen. We have retail customers that have told us that their website is their IP. Because could you picture if a customer was having a 20% off sale next week on fine jewelry and their competitor was able to access their QA environment, find out that the sale was coming up, was like, oh, well, we'll do 25% off. That's terrible, right? That's their IP. So of course, security is of paramount importance. So the tunnel methods allow you to do a couple of things. They allow you to get a list of the tunnels that are currently running and to identify information about those tunnels. How long have they been up? When was their last test run on them? How long, what kind of information can you get out of that? Also, you can actually stop tunnels using the API as well. So if you need to, disable access to a certain staging environment that is available through a tunnel, and I know Dave Cadwalder will be talking about security in the next talk in this very room, so you can find out about why you might want to stop a tunnel mid-run just to protect yourself from a security standpoint. So then we come to really the meat. These are probably our most used calls, and I do apologize about my voice, guys. I swear I'm going through a cold. It's terrible. So the get jobs call is going to get you a list of what kind of jobs are currently running or what are the most recently run jobs. You're going to use this to identify what's happening at any given time, and some of our customers have used this, and I'll show an example of it in a little bit, to get a list of currently running jobs and to avoid queuing on Sauce, because as I'm sure all of you know, we don't recommend using Sauce to queue your jobs. You should be doing that locally. So they've actually developed services and tools that they use for queuing their jobs locally and then parse them out and send them to Sauce when they free up a concurrent session. The update jobs call is probably our most used API call. This is actually a call that all of you should be using to set your job's pass or fail status. We at Sauce do not determine how your tests are doing. If you click a button and you're expecting A but get B, we don't know that, right? We just take what you get and spit out the video or the results of what happens. We can't make an arbitrated decision about your software and your code. So we rely on you to actually select that pass or fail value and tell us, hey, this test passed, this test failed. I want to get on with that. Probably our most used call, this is actually the one call that we do not throttle from a REST API limit standpoint, because if you want to run thousands of tests in a minute, first off, more power to you, because it's awesome. Second off, we want you to be able to update your results. And then a lot of people rely on our dashboard as opposed to local CI tools or local dashboards that they have to build themselves to actually maintain pass or fail status of their builds and of their tests and so on and so forth. The next two sets of tests are our delete and stop job calls. These are pretty obvious and self-explanatory, but the big question a lot of people ask is, why would I want to delete a job? You guys keep it around for me for 30 days. It's not that long a time. Why would I want to delete it? Well, we do have a lot of security-averse customers, like many of you in the room. I'm looking at a couple of you in the room in particular. And they actually will go and delete not only the job, but the job asset files right after the test is complete, because they'll actually download them to their local machine or their LAN and not store them on Sauce. Again, very security averse. It's especially true in like the healthcare industry, financial industry, et cetera. They also have legal requirements, right? We store tests for 30 days. After 30 days, we have a finite number of hard drives that we can fill up with videos and images and screenshots and so on that you take. But we have to delete them after that time. But financial firms, for example, have Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which requires that you store data for, I think, 7 years. So obviously we're not storing it that long. So there's a perfect example of someone who will go and download all of the asset files and then go and delete the asset files and delete all history of the job. There's a plus and a downside to doing this, right? If you delete your job completely and you come to us and say, hey, I had a problem with this job, well, guess what? We can't really do a lot of debugging for you if we don't know what you did. So if you're doing that, there may be times when you want to turn that feature on or off, and that's a desired capability call, or it could be just a REST API that you disable for a little while. You don't do this REST API call. So then we have these are our platform information methods, and these are the two methods that you do not need a sauce username or access key to connect to. So obviously, we get this a lot. Hey, how do I know if sauce is running? How do I know if sauce is up? Well, there's two ways, right? First off, we have a status page. Like every major software enterprise now, status.saucelabs.com. It'll say, hey, we're green, we're yellow, we're red. It's pretty rare for that, but it does happen. But you can also pull the Sauce Lab status API, and this can be something that you might do before a test run starts, not on a per test basis, but before you start an entire build. And this will save you from, hey, all of your tests just all fall over, right, instantly because sauce might be down for some reason, or run a maintenance period, which we also announce on our status page as well. The other thing that's really interesting and used quite a bit, and I bet many of you use it without even knowing that you use this call on a regular basis, is the get supported platforms call. This is actually something that we use in all of our integrations. So those of you out there using our Jenkins plugin, our Travis plugin, our Bamboo plugin, and VSTS, and so on and so forth, when we go and we have that drop down of available browser OS combinations for you, every time you configure that, when you click that, that down arrow on that drop down, you're actually making a call to our platforms API to get a list of all of our available platforms at that time. And we have 800 plus of them, so it would really suck if you guys had to parse through that manually. So we want to save you the time and effort. We do all that work for you, right? Now, how many of you guys are testing mobile? Cool. Next year, I expect that number to be like triple, because mobile is absolutely the next wave of automated testing. The number of people I hear talking to me about mobile and Appium testing, and I hope you all went to the keynote from Jonathan Lips yesterday. He's sort of the guy in charge of Appium right now, are doing so much. If you want to test on mobile, you're going to need our temporary storage methods. This is how you're going to upload your app, your APK or your IPA file to Sauce so that we can install it on our emulators, simulators, or real devices. So we're going to give you the opportunity there to upload your app. And the nice thing is we have a couple of options for you. Either A, you can overwrite it. So you can overwrite your app every 5 minutes if you want to. On a next test, you have a new version of the app, etc. Or you can wait 7 days and it just disappears. It's ephemeral storage, just like the Sauce Labs archives, etc. After a short period of time, it does disappear. And then, of course, you're going to upload a lot of files, right? You're going to have version 1, version 2, version 3, version 10, version a million, and so on and so forth. So you do want to keep track of what you have up there. So you do want to get the list of stored files periodically. You may have a reason to want to know, hey, what have I uploaded? And this is also true when you start doing things like pre-run executables. For example, some people may have to log into LDAP to get through a proxy server before they're able to do their testing. And so you'd upload those to our Sauce storage, and you'd be able to then, you'd be able to then utilize those pre-run executables to be able to get past LDAP and many of the other things that you might want to do, configure a computer system before your tests start. I see a lot of people doing things like modifying registry entries because they may have some hard-coded registry thing that gets read by their website that they're using to verify that they actually should have access to the page they're trying to reach. Again, high security. Now, the test activity and usage methods are how you're going to really identify from a dashboarding standard how your tests are doing, right? How are people testing? How much testing are they doing? Who is this user and what are they doing? So here, using the get user concurrency method, what you're going to do is you're going to see current available sessions and how many sessions are currently used for any specific user. So it doesn't have to be you, right? If you're an administrator, you might want to see what employee X is doing because you want to make sure that they're being productive. And there's a lot of managers in the room here. I know that for a fact. You want to know what your employees are doing and how they're doing. And this is one of the ways you can do that. We're going to talk about another way that shortly, actually. But also, you're going to want to see what their activity is, right? How many tests are they running? What was their last set of tests run, et cetera, and so forth. And then, of course, account usage is going to get you the number of tests run on a day-by-day basis for a certain user. Again, guys, for those of you who are just employees, who aren't management, trust me, your managers want to know this stuff. They want to make sure you're running tests. Because if you're not, what is QA doing? And their managers are the ones who really want to know, because if they're not seeing what QA is doing, that means that there's a whole breakdown in the process. Now, I skipped a couple of sections of the API, and that's because we have a couple of new API sections I want to talk about. Everyone here know that we just announced new analytics in the Sauce Labs dashboard? Awesome. So we also have a fully featured API just for those analytics. So if you don't love what is in our analytics dashboard, guess what? DIY, right? So first off, you're able to pull test trends, right? So what that means is you're going to be able to see how you're doing as far as browser OS combinations. Are you testing across the entire field of browsers and OSs that are determined by your company and what's important to them, what they want to test? Are you actually seeing good pass and fail results? Are you seeing that, hey, every time I test on IE9, all my tests fail? Well, if that's important to you, which I'm hoping that is less and less important to many of you, you may want to go and look at that. And while you can see that in our dashboard, you also have the ability now to build your own dashboards and show them off internally without having someone with a Sauce Labs login being able to look at them, right? You're also able to look at aggregate different kinds of errors that are happening. We do have a list of basically 15 to 20 common error messages that may happen. Things like timeouts, things like an element not being found, you're not able to find a certain VM, there was a certain error that happened on the page. We can actually aggregate those and see quickly what is the biggest common error message that is happening to you and why. And this is an example of when either A, you should reach out, or in some cases, Sauce will actually reach out to you and say, hey, we noticed that last month, all of a sudden you spiked up and now 50% of your tests are failing with this error message. And we want to help you, right? Or you come to us and send an email to support and say, hey, so I noticed that 50% of my tests are failing now, and they're all giving me this error, and I don't understand why. And then, of course, we would help you work through that. Now, obviously, when you want to get specific build and test statistics, you all know that you can use the desired capabilities in Sauce to actually combine your tests into builds, similarly to how Jenkins actually will combine, a series of tests into one build, into a job, so to speak. You can actually do that with Sauce, and if you don't know how, again, let's talk after the session, and I'll happily go through that and explain it to you. So here, using the build and test statistics API, you can actually review these tests inside of each of the builds and then drill down into that browser OS specification, drill down into their pass or fail statistics and so on. The nice thing as well is you can actually limit all of these APIs by date and time. So if you name your builds the same every time, if they're always company A build, it would be really tough to identify which build you're actually talking about, right? But let's say you ran it at 1650 every day, and that's your build that you really care about. Well, so you limit it to today's build at 1650. And then the test list API is just going to allow you to get a list of tests based on the name that you've set with them and the time frame and their status as well. So these are some basic APIs, but you'd be amazed actually if you spend some time creating a dashboard for this, what kind of information you can get out of this. And just a couple of basic ideas of what you can do with analytics. You can actually identify only your failed and error test. You can limit it down to only look for your failed and error test and then do all sorts of data manipulation with that, right? In fact, I was talking to someone recently. They have created a way to track which tests are failing, what is the likelihood of those tests failing, and then they're actually grading the tests, the quality of the test, how are the tests doing, and so on, using the Sauce API. And they're using not only the analytics API, but also the usage activity API in concurrency. The other thing you can also do is you can actually sync this up with Jira to easily be able to identify when a certain test started failing, right? Did this test start failing when we had this release go out? And then you can trace it back to, this is the Holy Grail, right? Tracing the test back to a developer that caused the bug, and then you go and be like, hey, I've had video for the last 2 weeks of this test failing, and here's the commit you made on May 1st, and all of a sudden the test started breaking. And of course they're gonna go, well, it works for me. We know this, right? Yeah, so you go to them and you go, it doesn't work, I have video. So definitely want to make sure that's something you talk about. Now, also, guys, again, this really gives you the opportunity to build your own dashboard. We have some great ideas, right? And we come to you, our customers, which I'm assuming just about everyone in this room is, and say, hey, what do you want to see in our product, right? But maybe your idea didn't get implemented for some reason or another, or maybe you have something unique and cool you want to do with analytics or with our APIs. Go out there and do it yourself. And if you think it's awesome, show us, right? I actually went to a couple of our customers and said, hey, what are you guys doing with our API? What cool things are you doing? So this is one of our customers, Spreadfast. They actually built a queue management tool, and the way it works here is actually they have a list of tests and they've prioritized every single one of their automated test cases. They've given them a set of 4 different priorities. They have a smoke test, they have high priority, medium priority, and low priority. Smoke obviously is that most important priority, it even breaks the high priority barrier. So what they'll actually do is they have a certain number of VMs allotted to them, and they will then run their tests nonstop. And then what they do is they actually go and they say, well, we have a bunch of low priority tests that are basically running all the time. And then they'll go and they'll have a high priority, they'll have a release come out, like, okay, we have a set of high priority tests we want to run now. Those high priority tests will go in, and as soon as a low priority test falls off and is done, high priority test will take its place and the low priority test will just go further down the pile, so to speak. Really cool feature, and this is again something when we say don't queue on sauce. This is them queuing on their own service. They actually have this running as a microservice on their Jenkins environment, and as you can see here, you can see that they actually track how long each test runs, what the session ID of that test was, and then of course their current status and how those tests are doing. We also actually partnered with New Relic a little bit, and they actually went and made an integration that shows how tests are doing on an average day. What is the total usage? They actually used their own, they dog-fooded their insights platform. Anyone here use New Relic for anything? Yeah, cool. So they dog-fooded their insights platform, and while a lot of the information that they did came out pre-analytics, and you can get all this information inside analytics, what they've actually done here is they actually are tracking, and obviously names have been blurred out to protect the innocent. They're actually tracking here who's using the most concurrent VMs, who's running the most jobs, what teams are high utilizers of sauce. And what a lot of our customers do, and I see this, is they'll say, hey, we have 100 VMs available, and we're going to limit each team to 25 VMs. And they'll go and look at something like this, and they'll see that team A is constantly pegging against that 25 VM limit every day. And then team C is like, well, they're using 5. So what you need to do is then you need to go and load balance that usage, right? Or you need to go to team C and be like, hey, what's up with your testing? Why aren't you testing faster? Why aren't you releasing your product faster? Why are there so many bugs? Because you're not testing enough, right? And then of course they've gone and they've integrated even more with their reporting tools. They can actually track how many seconds a day are they testing for each user. So again, this is more information about your teams, more information for your management. Because the biggest thing that happens with automation, if you don't have some sort of dashboard that is easily available to people, and many of you who have heard me talk in the past will know I actually recommend putting a dashboard on a screen, like on a monitor, maybe not one this big, maybe one about the size of the TV in front of me. Hang it from the ceiling so that people walk by it every day. If you just have a web dashboard, no one's ever going to visit it. If you send out an email, you know what's going to happen after about 3 or 4 of those emails? I know I do this, so I know you do. A rule gets created and it goes in the trash, right? Or into a folder that no one ever checks. So you want to have this displayed, and here your managers are going to see this, and they are going to know that automation is doing stuff, because we are the silent partner that no one really thinks about until shit really hits the fan, right? Wait, did automation catch that? Why did automation catch that thing? And the fact of the matter was, no one wrote a test for it typically. But here, they pipe this into insights, and so they're not only seeing the maximum number of time that people are using in seconds, but how often are teams queuing jobs? So you can see here that the blue team actually is queuing jobs quite a bit. They're actually, looking at needing to upgrade the amount of users that concurrent sessions that team is able to run, because they're able to constantly hit the max limit. That's team A, right? We then look at the light green team here that isn't really doing much. They're barely using any of their concurrency, so they might need to drop theirs down, or again, go and visit them. We also actually partnered with Eureka a bit, and they made their own scenario execution information. They wanted to track how many tests are they running, and then how many of those tests are failing on a day-to-day basis. When you look at something like this, you actually see that they're actually having up to 40% or even higher failures sometimes. And so it's important on a day-to-day basis to track that kind of stuff, and especially over time. You can see it's a 1-month graph, but obviously they can expand that out using our API. You can go, we keep that information much longer than 30 days, all that API information you can get. So here they're tracking who's failing the test most, why are they failing, what test is failing, where are flaky bad tests and how are they doing it. So you want to make sure that you're keeping track of that information, and then build a way to see this and show it off graphically, because again, you want to make sure that management knows that you're constantly improving. Now, I've shown you some examples of what customers have done with APIs, but again, I urge you to think of your own ideas. Every one of you has a unique use case. I know a lot of you in this room, I've spoken with you personally, either this week or in the past, and every one of your use cases has something different to it. Customers have used them for all sorts of things. I said earlier, they're auto-provisioning, creating, deleting, resetting accounts without using a tool like SSO. They're identifying and grading test quality, and just a myriad of other things. I can't name them all, and again, each of you has different things you're doing. So I want everyone to go home. I want you to think of one idea that you have to use for our REST API and how it's going to benefit you and your company, and how you're going to use it on an everyday basis. Where are you going to show it? What are you going to do with it? What is its purpose? And I want you to email it to me. That's your homework. Again, my email, leo@saucelabs.com. I want you to email it to me and talk to me about it so I can tell you if it's good or bad. So with that, guys, that's really all I had to talk to you about this morning. A little early, but that's okay. Anyone have any questions? I have Larry in the back. I want him to run. Oh, he's in the front. Someone, you in the back. No, back row in the blue shirt. You get to ask a question because you sat in the back row. I told Larry I was going to make him run today.
So with the API that you have around get tunnels, does that allow you the ability to find out what happens to a tunnel when they disappear? So we've often seen that our tunnels has completely disappeared from sauce. We open a ticket with service and it gets brought back up. I'd like to have an interactive way of determining when my tunnel goes down to track it so that I can at least know it's up before I kick off my regression runs against you and utilize you more.
Awesome. So I didn't actually talk about this API because it's not actually the Sauce API, but it's a Sauce Connect API. We just released with version 4.4.6 of the Sauce Connect proxy. We actually just released a way that you can use an internal heartbeats, we call it the heartbeats API, to track when how a tunnel's doing, and then when it dies, do whatever you want to do. Kill the process and start a new one, etc. So make use of that heartbeats API, and if you have questions on that, hit up the Genius bar and ask them where it is. They'll show you the wiki page, how to use it, etc. Anybody else? I'm making you run, Larry. It's payback for yesterday.
So with your APIs, I mean, we can build all these integrations ourselves, but do you have any future plans to integrate this with some of the open source Elk, Splunk, anything like that, so that we can pull all that data in and start doing pre-canned dashboards that way?
So I know we have a partnership with Splunk. I don't know the full details of it, but I urge you to shoot me an email after, and I can connect you with a resource that may have a better idea of it. JT in the back, you're in the back row, man. And I'm making Larry, I'm not kidding, I'm making Larry run.
All right, so we're still building our continuous deployment pipeline and getting our test expansion. What would you recommend being our first step in terms of getting analytics and things like that up? Yeah, what's the quick first hit of how to really get into it? Because we aren't really using the REST API at all for reporting right now.
Sure, so the first step, if you want to build your own dashboard, is take a look at what is available to you in the Sauce Analytics dashboard. And like I said, I'm not a fan of dashboards or emails. I want you to literally, get a ceiling mount, hang a screen from it so people can see it, not just your team, but everybody walking by. And just start showing the analytics dashboard, right? Start showing what is, hey, yesterday we ran 5,000 tests, and of those, 90% passed and 10% failed, and here are the error messages that caused those 10% to fail, why they failed, etc. That would be the first thing. One thing I really love to see is literally a binary green or red. Is the latest build green or red? And the way I like people to think about this is when people are seeing the green colors constantly, hey, it's green every day, they walk by it, it's sort of subconscious, oh yeah, the monitor is green, everything's great, it's green. and then all of a sudden one day it's red, man, all hands on deck. People are like, holy crap, something changed. What changed? What's going on? So I really urge you to really think about like how to get that visible, because then again, QA automation, you need to have people be confident in it and that it's doing stuff. So use this to dashboard something and show it to everybody. Greg, you look busy on your cell phone. Oh wait, no, we have another guy in the back. Larry needs a break.
So I've written a number of scripts that make use of the API, but there's certain things that the API doesn't seem to be able to do. For example, around concurrency, you're able to get your current concurrency, but there's no historical data around that. For example, when a test, when the job data comes back, it has a period of queue time before it starts. That's always going to be there while, I guess, the VM's getting set up, et cetera. But there's no way to really compare that to find out if it's truly queued or if it's just queued in the nature of starting the test. Any recommendations on how to address those kinds of limitations?
So it's an interesting question. I haven't heard it asked before. I think we have, there is at least one product person standing in the back of the room, hiding back there. And I know we're definitely gonna take that back and review that. That's a really good idea to track how long tests are queued on startup. We do actually sort of have a continuous, it's pretty flat line of how long queuing is gonna take as far as a startup time for the VM, because of course, right, you get this pristine, clean VM every time. So I don't know if you're gonna get a ton of value out of that. One of the things that I know a lot of you have seen this, if you have, let's say you have 50 VMs, have you ever seen it like spike up to like 55? Anyone get freaked out by that? So that's actually something you shouldn't worry about. What happens is every time your test finishes, as you guys know, we have some post-processing stuff that happens. We actually have to record the video, save the file off, upload it, etc. And that takes a moment or two. And so what we do is while we're doing that, we let you spin up another test. And while we still have that VM up, so your dial is 211, so to speak, we actually don't count that against you. So those of you worried, we're not charging you for it or anything. It's just post-processing time, right? We're actually giving you a freebie, so to speak. Anybody else? Larry, Greg wants you to run, man.
Do you have any tips around like actually doing the queue management on your end? So like at Gannett, we have probably about 40 teams using Sauce, so trying to actually throttle that based on the teams. Like this is a good example, but where do I get more information about this?
Awesome. So it's a good question, actually. So I'll be a little honest. I'll give you a little background. I was the QA manager that actually wrote this, that was in charge of getting this written at this company at the time. This is actually a former employer. And they're actually working on open sourcing it currently. Because the way it's written, it obviously wouldn't work for all of you in this room. There is active work being done by the current QA team to actually get it sort of more universal. And I'll definitely be publicizing that when it comes. I was actually really hoping to be able to stand up here and announce that, hey, we have an open source queuing tool, but unfortunately not yet. Hopefully in the next month or two. I literally messaged him last week. I was like, hey, any luck? And he's like, man, it's been really busy. So not much I can do. Awesome. Oh, we got one more in the back, Larry. I'm not kidding, man. I'm not picking on you anymore.
So similar to that last question, I'd mentioned earlier, I've written a number of scripts that do certain things using the API. Is there any sort of effort to make like sauce approved scripts or examples public? Any sort of way to encourage users, hey, you should utilize this kind of thing so they don't have to start from scratch every time? So
we do have examples in our wiki of a call, of like a simple curl call for every single command. So there is that example. However, and we also have some plugins for each language. So like we have the Sauce REST Java client, etc. I actually maintain that one. So we and there, for other languages, I think there's one for PHP and one for Ruby. But because every one of you has a different use case, we're not publicizing specific. This is a best practice on how to use our REST API as of yet. Awesome. Well, I think that I'm out of time. So Manny's about to kick me off the stage. So I want to thank you guys.
Thanks, Leo.